This is a very impressive audience, and it's a really interesting day. And I very briefly, following Secretary Spelling, am trying to set the stage. I want to do three things. One, I want to continue a description of where we are by making a comparison of where we are compared to the world. And I have 4 slides I want to share with you. Somebody out there is doing a slide for me. Can you put the first one on, please? Beyond Ed and 08. If we had the Olympics of 15-year-olds in math last month, we wouldn't have been on the podium. We would have been 25th in line among 30 nations. That's based on the PISA test. I find that a very reliable world-class indicator of our relative performance. So Secretary Spelling's right. We've made some modest gain. But let me tell you, the rest of the world has made really great strides. And we are falling behind further and further every year compared to their educational performance. And the connection between this and economics is very clear. Those 15-year-olds in the United States who are 25th in line now in math, 10 years from now, when they're getting a job in this global marketplace, are going to be 25th in line for that job. Let's have the next slide. This one is on science. And many of you know the answer. If you compare the United States with 30 industrial nations, we're 21st. And again, this is dropping year by year. And again, it's not because we're going further behind, it's the rest of the world is moving very rapidly. Now, I'm not going to spend any more time describing that scene other than to mention dropouts, but also I want to mention the problem of remediation. At 10 o'clock this morning, Joel Klein and I will be announcing to the press a study that we authorized in Strong American Schools called Diploma to Nowhere. And what we find, and I'd like to ask for the third slide now, what we find here, and this is going to be difficult for you to read because of the small print, but I'll share it with you, and it is that 34% of all students take remedial courses. When I was superintendent of schools in LA, I was shocked when I found that the entering students at the California State College system, that 35% approximately were taking remedial courses. This is it's kind of like buying a car, driving it off the lot, and you find that the clutch doesn't work. You know, there's no warranty. You know, you were represented that this certificate of high school graduation prepares you for the next step of your employment or education. And we simply are giving a false message to students. And the remediation is very, very extensive. And the next slide will show us some of the costs of that remediation. And this is, again, on this study we'll announce today, that the total cost is between $2.5 and $3 billion a year. That's just in the cost of the education presentation. It doesn't measure the cost of the dropout from college that also is a result of this lack of preparation. So the first thing I want to say is that we are falling behind the rest of the world at a faster rate. Secondly, there's real economic consequence to this. Now, let me turn to that. I'll just be very brief, and I'll quote Ed Hanuchek of the Hoover Institute. He's done some very extensive work about the connection between our educational performance and our economic gain. And if anybody doesn't have that on their mind, go read this morning's newspapers. But Hanuchek said that 12 years ago, when we were saying we were going to be first in the world by the year 2000, it was more than 12 years ago, but if we had reached in this nation the average performance of the 10 best nations in that standard, that 30-nation standard, if we had been able to obtain that in a 10 or 20-year period, we would have had an increase in our gross national product that was equal to the cost of all public school education in the United States. The leverage of increased skill levels and performance of individuals is dramatic in the world scene. So I wanted to lay out the problem of comparing with other nations, I wanted to lay out the economic cost just in broad terms. I want to close by talking about the political reality in this country. If we can get beyond lipstick and begin to talk about the real issues, it's very interesting to observe what candidates for federal office say about education in Iowa and Colorado. There's two real barriers to effective communication about our agenda this morning. First, American people don't feel that the problem is that great. Their youngster gets a B in a suburban high school, and they think we're doing pretty good. We're really not doing that well at all. Secondly, the second problem is, even if there's a problem, they don't think it is the nation's problem. It's a local problem. And I want to just hold up an exhibit I can't put on the screen, but it's large enough I think you can see it. This is a map of 15,000 school districts in the United States. Just visually, I want you to think about what you would do if you were President of the United States. And you are confronted in a world in which you have got to mobilize a nation. One, to keep the nation safe, national security. Mobilize it, two, in terms of global warming and energy policy. Three, the matter of health. Four, the economy. Any president knows that to move those four subjects, you've got to have some collective national policy, even though the implementation of that policy is at various levels of government. We'll turn to the fifth issue, and that is education. This president, about to be elected, whoever it is going to realize that I cannot move in those first four policy areas unless I also move dramatically in a fifth one, and that is education of the American people. And then that president's staring at this map of 15,000 school districts, looking at the performance of education in the last 25 years of this nation compared with the rest of the world. We need a Sputnik moment. We are in serious trouble. But what I'm asking you to think about today as you go through your agenda, what is the organizational methodology that a president or a national group of leaders of both parties can get this nation to respond to the political will and effective increase of educational performance? We simply, and you can look at a lot of models. You can go to France, to Singapore, to others, and say we're going to have a national solution. That's not in our tradition. So we need to find a way, and the key to it is states. Any president is going to say, we can't do it with 15,000 jurisdictions, but we can do it by an orderly system of holding 50 states accountable and giving them proper incentives. So I want to close by saying the following. The biggest barrier of a president or anybody else going to Iowa and say, I want to talk to you about education, is they feel immediately the states' rights issue, and they say, it's not your problem. I don't want you to order me how to run my schools. We need a different political paradigm. And I want to suggest one. If we could get the states, through their own collaboration, to benchmark themselves against the 10 best nations in the world, they make that decision. This is where we got to go for our 8th graders, that we are going to want good jobs in 10 years. If we can get the states to agree to that voluntarily, then the federal government could say, we will come to the table with appropriate incentives for those of you who do make that commitment. And you benchmark it annually, and you agree to get there over a certain committed period of time. The federal government then could lay on the table some incentives, and included in those incentives have got to be the issue of tests. We need to design more authentic tests for a system which we hope to hold accountable. And the federal government can provide the money for the design of those tests, of these collaboration of states. They could provide the money for the administration of these tests. And the third part of the incentive package has got to be something that radically changes the way we recruit, retain, and train teachers in this country. But if we could get the President of the United States and the Congress of the United States in the posture of going to Iowa and saying to Iowa, I'm not here to tell you what you want to do. You've already decided you want to be world class. We, the federal government, are here to give you tools, if you voluntarily want to use them, to help you get there. And we want to give you an annual report card for every child in America to show what progress that child is making on a standard which is not, quote, grade level, because I don't know what grade level means, but I do know what worldwide competition means. Those are my remarks. Thank you.